Brilliant. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Welcome to Active Travel Cafe. Tonight we've got our regular news roundup, which we're really looking forward to. And then our speakers. First of all, thanks to Luke Collins for lining up our speakers. That was really kind of you, Luke, to make that connection. And we've got Matt Smith from the University of Brighton and Beck Cedar from the Clare Project. You can correct me if I can get anything wrong on this, Matt and Beck. And they are going to be talking about their an overview of the TMBI cycling project, which explored the benefits of and barriers to cycling for transgender, non-binary and intersex people in Brighton and Hove. And they've done things like created a zine to showcase the findings. And following this, we've got Jeronia Curells from Barcelona, and Jeronia is going to follow up on discussing LGBTIQ plus experiences of active travel, working and cycling in and around Barcelona. So that's our speakers later, which is really exciting to get into. But before we do all that, we're going to run around the countries, I should say, apologies, and find out what's been happening locally. So hands up if you've got an update from your area. And H, super keen, you've got your hand up straight away. Did you want to come in on something happening
Yeah,
with you
well,
in Glasgow?
I'm in hospital still, so I'm looking like Santa Claus. I haven't put anything near my hairs for 25 days, so it shows. But I was going to pop in the chat. I'm H now, very much no pronoun, no title. Great, feels really messes up forms of treat. I've also been talking. A friend of mine couldn't walk until he was 9, but he could ride a tricycle when he was 3 because he has cerebral palsy, and he still gets around on his bike brilliantly. And we've been talking about the idea of hire bikes that would be suitable for people with, mobility issues, because there's a variety of issues that people have. And I'm just wondering, looking at the new Voy bikes, the small wheel ones, I'd love to be discussing with somebody anything about the tadpole trikes where you can steer and they lean at the same time. I seem to remember the tadpole trike with Ackerman steering that leans. And could we persuade Voy to include those in their fleet so that people who've got leg balance or whatever problems can actually ride a bike?
Brilliant, H. Thanks for that. Well, listen, I think I speak for all of us in hoping you're getting better really soon. And that's a direct challenge from H there, people, for somebody to come forward and volunteer to give that talk. So you're all far more expert in this area than I am. So you know where you are. Email us, offer to do the talk. That'd be helpful. Okay, thanks, H. Anybody else got an update from near them? Stick your hands up. Has nothing happened on active travel anywhere in the UK? Wow. I don't know what the rest of the team think, but that might be a first. Sarah, come on in.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me? There we go.
Yes, we can.
The Nottingham cycling and walking bridge, which was funded through the central government funding, is just been craned in a couple of weeks ago. So that's due to be, it's over the Trent between the south side of Nottingham and the north side. So that'd be quite exciting. Opens in the spring, apparently.
That's exciting, Sarah. Can you, when you're ready, can you get a photo of it and share it with us? And that'd be really quite exciting.
I can share the web page with you. I don't know how to do that, mind. I've stuck it in the chat. I don't know. The technology is a bit beyond me. But yeah, I'll go out on the bike when it's done.
That's exciting. Love a bit of infrastructure. Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. Robin, what's happening in Oxford?
Yes. Oh, everything is happening in Oxford. We've had Mark Ranty Highwayman come and visit us and look around. He's been looking around some of our side road entry treatments and other junctions, which is great. Met him down the pub last night. It'd be great if he'll report back to this. Well, he's been on recently. So anyway, at the City Council, not the one responsible for transport, the I'll say the pro-traffic Independent Oxford Alliance raised a motion against traffic filters and workplace parking levy. Traffic filters due to start next year when the Botley Bridge opens. They lost. The Labour Party abstained. They're not quite sure at the moment which way they're coming or going, but they abstained. They lost the motion 15 votes to 8, And so the City Council effectively has supported these two traffic reduction schemes. So Oxford, it remains kind of politically exciting and radically progressive. Never a dull moment, really.
That's all we like to hear, Robin. Brilliant stuff. Any more? Otherwise, we're going to go straight over to our speakers. That's nice and efficient. It's bittersweet, though. Matt and Beck, it's not like we don't want to get to you, but we like to hear this cascade of excitement across the country. But we will move on. So really looking forward to all of your contributions. I think unless you disagree, what we might do, Matt and Beck, is hear about your project and your findings and go through that with you. Then we'll do some questions and then come to you, Jeronia, after that, if that's all right. So we can sort of break it up, and I'll try and keep us roughly to time. But over to you to tell us about your work and the Clare Project.
Cool, thank you very much. I'll just share the slides. Hopefully that's all shared and you can all see that. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks great.
So yeah, thank you for having us, and thank you, Luke, for suggesting this session. We've only got 10 minutes, so I'll just start my timer, try and keep myself accountable, not run over. So my name's Dr. Matt Smith from the University of Brighton, pronouns they, them, and what brought me to the research, the TMBI cycling project, which I led on, was during my PhD based at the University of Brighton. I looked at trans experiences of the city and urban planning. Mobility in that really came to the fore, but when I was both looking at policy, local planning policy, any kind of mobility documents, transportation documents, there wasn't a lot around trans equity and research around that intersection, or generally LGBTQ plus as well. And so I was interested in kind of researching this further, because we know that previous research had highlighted negative experiences for trans, non-binary, intersex people around public transit and harassment and hypervigilance that occurs on public transit, particularly spaces of immobility like bus stops. However, in my PhD, some of the participants did emphasize active travel and cycling as enabling them independence over their movement, and also good gender feels whilst doing that. So wanted to explore the further benefits and barriers to active travel for TMBI folk. And so I got a small pot of money to do that. And working with Beck and Lee, we held some groups and made a zine. But Beck, would you like to briefly introduce yourself as well, and what brought you to the project?
Sure, thank you. So I'm Beck, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Executive Director of the Clare Project, which is a trans, non-binary, intersex support charity across Sussex. And Matt approached our organisation to ask if we could co-research and support the project. And so my predecessor approached me because I'm, one, trans, and two, I love riding my bike. So it was a perfect fit. And our organisation exists to improve the health outcomes for trans, non-binary, intersex people across Sussex. So this research felt like a really good fit for us to be able to, just highlight some of the things that Matt will go through.
Perfect, thank you. And so, I would say we're both cyclists, so we're both very biased around the benefits and the joys of cycling. In terms of the project, we held 5 group sessions between May and July of this year. So we did 2 lived experience discussions, so bringing people together to just discuss what their experiences were, how they found things, whether that's the good, the bad, the ugly. And then we did 2 zine-making sessions as well. And there was also a hybrid kind of changes we want to see, which a member of the Planning Regeneration Committee from the local council attended as well. And in total, we had 20 TNBI people participate, and we focused on Brighton and Hove. Why is that? Well, that's kind of where we're based, and so it made sense to us, but it's been referred to as the LGBTQ capital. We know that trans people do move here, in order to access support, make connections, social life. But we also know that trans folks still experience harassment and discrimination, including poor kind of health inequalities that exist as well. And so we wanted to see how mobility kind of fit into that, and cycling was the kind of first way in. And so we made a zine called Under Our Own Power. The zine is available online on the blog. I do have a stack of paper copies, which are really nicely printed by a printer co-op in Leeds called Footprint Workers Co-op. So if you do, drop me an email and I can pop one in the post if you'd like a paper copy. But why did we make a zine? Well, it was an alternative to the research report, a kind of more creative visual form of engagement, hopefully, around the findings, but also something that is more joyful to read and enables a more direct or personal tone to be adopted within it, and different participants' kind of contributions. So there's minimal kind of editorial overview from our part. We hoped it would also be a resource for TMBI people, as it kind of offers motivation and solidarity. So if you're not into cycling, maybe you'll pick this up and you will become that. And I've already heard from people that they have been motivated to get on their bike from reading the zine, which is great. It's also part of DIY culture that brings kind of being trans and bikes together, which I kind of will give an example. And yeah, I'll leave it at that there for the zine. And then I'll just give a few examples of kind of content from within the zine. So some of the zine are participants' contributions where they've made something and they've submitted it to the project. And some of it is a kind of thematic analysis of the focus groups, and where we've just got some quotes with some themes. And so this is an example where the participant made a Venn diagram which says the overlaps between trans and cyclist. And they emphasize the world not being made for you, it being composed of risk, the complexity of negotiating visibility and invisibility, and also breaking the rules when they don't work for them as well. They talked about going through a red light maybe early at a junction because that's safer for them, because there's not like a bike gate or anything like that. And they do the same with like being trans as well, where you make use of the structures where they work, and where they don't work, you find your own way to navigate it. On the right is an example from one of the sessions where it also opened up a space to kind of dream about the future and the world we want to live in, and how people positioned kind of active travel within this wider idea of the kind of car-free city that they had in mind. But it was really nice in the project because it just opens up a space for kind of thinking through these things more collectively and together, a space of a bit of joy or dreaming, which at this time and place where there's kind of rising hostility it's been going on for quite a long time, and organized kind of backlash, it's really important for that kind of space and coming together and having something that's within research which isn't just focused on negative experiences as well. Another example here was a participant on the left. They highlighted the prohibitive cost of recumbent hand cycles that they would need to realize their cycling dreams, disability being an important intersection to consider, as the trans needs assessment from 2015 in Brighton, it highlighted that there's above average representation of disability and poor health within trans populations. And on the right is an example of the zine as a resource. We had a participant in the first group discussion say they wouldn't be sure how having bottom surgery would affect their cycling, because they cycle everywhere, and they were afraid that they weren't quite sure how that might change. And then we had this submission by chance from a 60-year-old trans woman who had gone through this process and had then realized it was very painful to cycle and made these adjustments to her bicycle. And so it feels like then we've got a very specific bit of knowledge that people were looking to get, and we were able to then address. I realized that we're already going at 8 minutes, and I need to hand over to Beck soon. So some of the benefits I'll just give a quick overview. It's the fact people found cycling and being in public space much more joyful and freeing than other forms of transit. They experienced a form of autonomy over their movement, which was really important as a way of being able to keep you safe and be able to adapt your movement. It also enabled people to regulate their nervous system, and that provided a relief from being read, because you're not sure how someone might take your silhouette in because you're kind of in movement and you're already moved on. And they also found an affirming space to connect with their body. There were plenty of barriers around confidence and safety, particularly the car culture in Brighton was seen as a real barrier where people weren't confident to get on the road, and the fragmented cycling infrastructure made it quite difficult to do that. There are also barriers such as precarious employment and the cycle to work scheme, that not always trans people qualify if you're in a fractional or fixed term kind of job as well. And so we had recommendations around having more TMBI spaces to build confidence and knowledge to get cycling, like bike maintenance and starter sessions, and also to get connection and community. And those are quite important because that's the kind of social infrastructure that enables them to stay and get on to the physical infrastructure. I'm just going to hand over to Beck at this point to give a little bit of a conclusion, and I've rattled through because I've already gone a little over time. But Beck, would you like to say a conclusion?
Did you accidentally nearly call me Bike there?
I always called you Bike.
I love that.
Just to let you both know, don't worry too much about. We won't be super strict with you. So Beck, you don't feel you need to rush.
Great, thanks. Well, I will try my best to be concise. For us as an organisation, it was a really important research to take part in, because when we first did a call out to ask our community who would be interested in taking part, a lot of people said they don't really see how their transness relates to their love of cycling or their use of cycling. But then what was really cool for us to see come out of this was just how all the benefits that Matt listed, and there's more in the zine and the report there, but it's about owning your own safety and your own autonomy and getting a chance to feel like you are you. There was some people talking about how when they were younger, they wanted to cycle, but then as they've transitioned, it's allowed them to reconnect with their family in a different way. And it's been a really wonderful process to be a part of. And I think having a zine is something really tactile. It's a really great way for us to be able to ensure that the trans people that have taken the time to be vulnerable in this study, it's in their own words, like they do own that research, and hopefully it will help influence changes. So yeah, as an organisation, it was a really great piece of research to be a part of. And we have since done another one into trans people's experiences of mental health, and we've used the zine format for that as well to make sure that voices that stay true to the individual. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Right, thanks Matt and Bike, as you're now rebranded Beck. That's very exciting. So I'm just wondering, because I saw a comment in the chat. Luke, did you want to come in on your thoughts briefly? Because you suggested Matt and Beck come on. So before I open up to questions, have you got any immediate thoughts?
Thanks, Steve. I guess I'm really excited to hear both from Matt and Beck and from Jeronia. I think, like the question around how infrastructure, around how places are designed with kind of different people and LGBTQI plus experience in mind is super important. So I think this is all work that's like contributing to that. And I was very excited to hear from them. My only kind of question was really, or more of a kind of a request, was maybe to kind of hear more from Matt and from Beck around the Venn diagram around that kind of trans and cyclist intersection. That's it. That just really kind of struck a chord with me when you saw it. So yeah, if there's any more you can say about that, I'd be be very appreciative.
Yeah, that was, I wonder if you could get that slide back up, Matt. That was a real penny drop moment for me when we were doing this research. Like I say, people thought, how does my transness relate to cycling? And this kind of sums it up so well. You could almost hide the word cycling and read out the points there around all the things that being trans mean, and then hide the word trans and just read that out in terms of bike cycling. The Venn diagram's a really interesting one.
Yeah, and thank you for highlighting that. It was really, really useful, and that participant, they gave a little bit more as well in the zine. And I'll just read out quickly, but they said that about the rules that they break. They go through red lights, they go up one-way streets the wrong way, they cycle on the pavement, brackets sometimes, but they also do DIY hormones, they lie to the doctors, they lie to the GIC, the gender identity clinics, they lie to the state. And they say that I do these things because they both involve systems which are not made for us. The road rules prioritize cars and not the safety of cyclists. I use my judgment and prioritize the safety of pedestrians, who I have more power over as a cyclist, but I do not obey rules that only serve to benefit cars. Same with being trans. I do what I need to navigate the NHS, the government, and to survive. And I think that really summed it up kind of really nicely there, at that intersection. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Just one quick follow-up, Matt, because in a way you both have answered Sarah's question in the Q&A, which is, do you think there's extra hostility towards trans LGBTQ plus people who cycle over the general hostility towards cyclists? So we kind of like, we've got hostility stacking, we could call it, can we give it a term? But just in terms of strategies to deal with hostility, I'm just wondering whether you thought through what are the best strategies to deal with that kind of hostile response, and anything for those of us who campaign on cycling might learn from.
I guess what my immediate thing when I'm thinking about like being visible or invisible, that really fluctuates and changes depending on kind of who you are and as you're cycling. So for a lot of trans masc people, they find that sometimes they're just mistaken for young people, or they're kind of just seen as a guy cycling along. And so there's sometimes that kind of produces a certain invisibility to their experience. And for other people, for instance, it's mostly for trans women who might be more visible, or if you're more gender non-conforming, then being on a bike at a traffic lights, those points of stasis can be the points where you feel more visible. But as you're then passing through the city, you kind of feel that sense of like being able to just, you know, if someone has a look, you don't know because you're already gone. And so there's that kind of difference. And I guess that's where then what we can do to support it. I looked at some research that was around Latina workshops, bike workshops in the United States, and they called it supplemental infrastructure. And that's where those alternative, like those spaces away from the kind of the public space where you're doing a bike maintenance, where you can meet people, you can have those chats, share your frustrations, those really keep people, they sustain people cycling, and they help people also take it up. And because they're a space that was a kind of alternative space for different like minoritized or marginalized groups. And so that's where kind of we're hoping to get some kind of TMBI bike maintenance workshop going soon. But like that's where I think those spaces are really key, because, you know, we can keep building physical infrastructure, but we know that it doesn't produce a diversity of cyclists. That's where you need that supplemental infrastructure.
Right. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to bring in one more question from the Q&A for you both, and then I'll bring in H and Robin, and then after that, I think we'll come to you, Jeronia, if that's okay, and hear about the experience of Barcelona. Mark asked, and it sort of built on what you were just talking about there, Matt. Mark from Brighton asked whether you engage with other cycling groups representing marginalised groups such as Black multicultural women. So did that come into your thinking or your process at all?
guess for the recruitment process, we engaged with a few different groups, but not everyone. Yeah, so we kind of put stuff up in different bike workshop spaces, and we put the kind of advert around on different bike kind of related places and also trans related spaces. But we didn't contact that group in particular, I guess mainly because we had such a short period of time that we ended up recruiting in. Because we got the funding for the study, I think March, and then we needed to spend the money and have the project done by July. So it was a kind of a real intense little process, and because I guess it's a pilot project to hopefully do something bigger, to do a larger study. But I don't like calling it a pilot project because I feel like we did so much and we've produced so much, it kind of goes a bit beyond that now. But yeah, it would be really good to look at all those kind of intersections, and the kind of solidarities with other marginalized cyclist groups a bit more. I think that would be something we'd want to do in any follow-up.
Brilliant, Matt. Thanks. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't think it does it justice. I love your zine, by the way. I think it's just awesome, and I think it doesn't do it justice to call it a pilot project. You're absolutely right. It's just raised loads more questions of what you could do with more time and resource, probably. But H and Robin, I'm going to bring you both in really briefly because we need to get to Jeronia. So H, did you want to come in if you got a question or a comment?
Yeah, well, people who know me in real life know I'm about 1/500 of a kilometre. I used to belong to the Tall Persons Club, and we had natal women who were 7 feet tall, but they all used to go to certain shops. And I know a couple in Brighton, they're both over 6 foot, and his wife loves being in Brighton because you can buy clothes for tall women because there's quite a large number of cross-dressers, I think, in Brighton as well. And so you get a great selection. That's one thing. The other, you mentioned bottom surgery, and I do know quite a few people in the community. One or two have had a few problems with cycling, and it's largely due to the fact they're not too careful about the way they remove hair follicles. And one of them could only ride recumbents consistently for many, many years until the results of the surgery settled down. Now, do you ever give people advice on that?
So I'll jump in there because our organisation, we run community sessions where people can seek support and advice from each other. Mm. So yeah, that would be the space where we would be directing people to just ask a question. I do know that with the surgery pathway, if it was on the NHS, you do have to undergo a series of hair removal and hair reduction sessions before surgery. So I don't know if that's changed since the person you know has had that experience, because that's such a shame that happened with them. But I know that there is, on the pathway, you do have to undertake a series of hair reduction sessions before you can have surgery. So I don't know how long ago it was for the person you know.
Thanks, Beck. Robin, did you want to come in? You've got a question.
Yeah. So I thought the zine format was really interesting, and so one of my other interests is space and science fiction, and I discovered there's a series of books called Transgalactic Bike Ride, which is described as feminist bicycle science fiction stories of transgender and non-binary adventures, and this crossed so many interests. I bought one, and it's a series of short stories, and there's several volumes in the series, and they're really powerful and uplifting stories, which are that's what first made me realize this that Venn diagram crossover, so many things in common between cyclists and LGBTQ people, and I thought it was really powerful and interesting. I'll put a link to one of them in the chat, but there's a series, and if people are interested in that kind of fiction, it's there's some great stories in there.
Yeah, I think I was gifted one of the volumes from that series as a present, because someone found that and they were like, I know the exact person who needs to read this book. So yeah, very enjoyable.
My mum gave me one of those books. I was like, this is so nice, such bonding.
Brilliant. This is turning into such a productive session. We've got fashion tips from H, a reading list is emerging, and we know there's a future research project, Matt, you need to start on immediately. So very productive. Did you pop that into the chat for us, Robin, so we can all make sure we get a copy? Excellent stuff. Well, listen, I'm just going to move us on. I think on a cold November evening, everybody should have the moment to say, let's go to Barcelona. So with that, Jeronia, let's go to, sorry, that was cheesy, wasn't it? Jeronia, tell us about your experiences and the work you've been doing.
Definitely. I'll try to share my screen. Let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, it looks like that's coming up. Yes, there we go. We can see that. If you want to go full screen or presentation mode so we can see it a little bit more clearly, that'd be great.
Okay, you see the full screen now?
No, it looks like you're still in design mode.
Okay. Let me try to do that again.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeronia.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, and I'll touch on some topics that were already discussed by Matt. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Universitat Autonoma de Barcelona. And I want to give a shout out to my colleagues who also participated in this project, both from my university, but also from the University of Westminster. And this research started with the idea that I started reading about queer mobilities, and mostly what I found were experiences of violence. And I wanted to know what made queer mobilities so threatening to some. And there are plenty of examples of policies or measures that try to ban or restrict the mobility of queer people. And here we have, for instance, an example of the Pride Parade in Budapest, which was prohibited, but didn't work. So I wanted to unpack that and learn from LGBTIQ plus people themselves about their experiences when navigating through the city. And I focus on walking and cycling, but I'll mostly share insights from cycling. To do so, I interviewed 22 people that identified as either non-binary or woman and labeled their sexuality as being lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, or queer. In these interviews, I asked them about their trips and how they were feeling during these trips. And they also did a relief map, which is a tool that works well to identify social inequalities. And the way these maps work is the following. They have 3 dimensions. The first dimension is the geographical one, where participants draw on the x-axis the different trips that we discussed. For instance, here you can see walking from the subway station to the university or biking from home to the gym. Then you have this other dimension, which is the psychological one, and it's a scale that goes from discomfort to comfort. And the last dimension is the social one, in which participants use different colors to map their discomfort in each of these trips for each of their social positions. So for instance, you can see here that in the trip walking from the subway station to the university, this person feels discomfort due to her gender and sexual orientation, but not due to her age and racialization. So as you can already see in this map, the experiences of participants depended on the route they were taking, on the time of the day, and if they were walking or cycling either with their partners or by themselves. They are also shaped by intersectional experiences of identities, but participants used several strategies to waive it. As it was already discussed before, some participants felt that some identities compared to walking became sort of invisible. Matt already discussed it. For instance, this trans woman said that when she was on her bike, people didn't have time to read their gender. But there were other identities that became very visible when cycling compared to walking. For instance, this is a experience of a participant that's racialized as not white, and she said that while her girlfriend dared to ring the bell, she wouldn't dare because she had already been ticketed, lectured by the police, and she felt that her identity as a Latino woman became very visible when cycling. But the visibility of queer people, it not only intake violent experiences, or it was not only linked to deterring violence, because it also entailed being exposed and recognized by others from the LGBTIQ plus community. This was joyful experience that enabled recognition and also building identity. Regarding the bike trip that I was discussing earlier, here you can see in the map how this person feels high levels of discomfort when cycling due to her racialization. But compared to other trips walking, there's a diminishment of the discomfort she feels due to her gender or sexual orientation. Another point that I wanted to highlight from this research is that participants used or performed genders kind of also to deter from this violence or to mock normative gender expectations. So while some participants were saying that when they're biking, they had to be more defiant and somehow perform an hegemonic form of masculinity, there were others that would use this sort of masculinity just to annoy other guys. For instance, these participants said that guys would always overtake her just because, and she would overtake them again just to annoy them, because she's sick of these kinds of displays of masculinity. So she somehow mirrored this identity, but at the same time to subvert gender norms. And there were other participants who perform femininity in a way they wouldn't usually do when walking, just to make the point that femininity should be equally respected when cycling. And the other thing I asked participants is what should change for them to feel better in the future. And they mostly emphasize the right to feel comfort. For instance, this participant does not want to take the bike to go as fast as possible. And also they imagine less aggressive environments where people can talk more. But the way also they imagine this future, like the path, was through queer mobilities. So for instance, this participant says that the way she moves, the way she pedals, the rhythm she uses, it's already like a projection of this future. So she uses queer mobilities to move to that future. In conclusion, with this presentation, I want to highlight that mobility of LGBTIQ plus people entails experiences that go beyond violence, because it can also be an expression of identity, of desire, or recognition, or questioning normativity. And what makes them so threatening is because they are not only about the mobility of LGBTIQ plus people, but they also entail the mobility of information and values, and most importantly, of possibilities. Because, for instance, just seeing somebody, another partner holding hands can bring feelings of comfort. And my take from planning is that sidewalks and bike lanes enable all these practices of queer mobilities, and as such, they can be understood as an essential part of the city's queer infrastructure. If you want to read the full paper, here you have the title and the link. And I would say that's all from my side.
Jeronia, thank you so much. So we've got a couple of questions coming through in the Q&A, and a round of applause emerging up the screen there. One from Bev in Cambridge, I think. This might be for all of you, and I think the question we've got in the Q&A from Sally as well as for everybody. Rapturous applause, Jeronia. Did you see that? There's like huge amounts. So a lot of love in the room. Bev asked whether there are things that cycling campaign groups can do to be more visibly supportive. And I think that's probably a question for all of you, having thought about this. So Jeronia, do you want to pick up on that as a start? And then I'll come to Matt and Beck.
What they can do, I think there are different practices. For instance, we discussed it with Matt earlier of bike reparation groups that they allow these sessions only for women or LGBTIQ plus people. That's a way to create a community, but also bike rides, I would say, can work the same way.
Thanks, Jeronia. Beck, Matt, did you come in on that question as well? What are your thoughts on what campaigners could do?
I guess yeah, it's kind of reiterating some of the things around I think of oh, of course I've forgotten her name now, but did the research on the kind of the cycle superhighways in London, and Tiffany Lamb and her research, and within that it really just shows that you can build the physical infrastructure, and it gets more people cycling, but it doesn't mean you get a diversity of people cycling. And so I think it's expanding a bit of that imagination of what constitutes kind of the cycle infrastructure as a whole. And I really liked what Jeronia was connecting there with the kind of thinking of them as part of the queer infrastructure. And so thinking these things together, whereas I know when we kind of get into talking with people working in councils, or there's a very distinct thing sometimes of, oh, I do this, I don't do that. And I think it's always got to be a bit of both, and you kind of expand that imagination. Because for a long time, like, you know, toilet provision wasn't seen as like, oh, that's not something I do, that's an issue for signage on the doors. But it's like that, you know, it's more complicated, and the social and the physical always come together.
Thanks, Matt. Beck, any thoughts from you on this?
I think just reiterating a point that we made in the zine was around the schemes that are in place to support people to get access to a bike aren't within reach of typically for the trans, non-binary, intersex community, because it's the most underemployed section of the community. Typically trans femme, trans women are lowest paid, most underemployed. From like a straw poll we've done in Brighton and Hove, for example, in the workplace, and there's a higher prevalence of precarious employment, so you can't have access to the cycle to work scheme. So just thinking about like the economic impact of what it means to be active with travel, it's not always, it does feel quite classist. So I think yeah, thinking about how that then even further impacts the TNBI community. And speaking up about that more, I think, is what can happen. Also, there was a really cool little bit of underground activism happening over the last couple of weeks when Cycling UK announced their 100 women in cycling, and a lot of women rejected the award. Dr Sarah Ruggs, for example, publicly saying, like, if you can't let trans women be included, then I want, you know, these are the people I ride my bikes with. I don't want to be part of your club. So I think it's just more around like the public statements that people make to make sure they are inclusive is really powerful. It starts to make a change.
I mean, Beck, you've picked up there on the question that we've actually got in the Q&A, actually, as to whether those policy changes from sporting bodies have come up either in your work or the research. How has that played out, do you think?
Can you say that again?
So in the question we've got a question from Anonymous. Did recent policy changes from sporting bodies, including at grassroots level, come up in terms of people's sense of belonging in cycling, which I think is a reference to the policy changes you were just talking about there?
Yes, you mentioned like sport regulations. So I wasn't looking to like sport mobility. I was looking to everyday mobilities. So the people that I interviewed, they mostly discussed like grocery shopping or going to see the grandma. Not something that really came up.
Great. Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeronia.
and I guess in our research it did come up, and I get particularly for people, that's why people wanted to do group social rides together, and they really, it wasn't just about getting more confident on a bike, it was about connection and community, because we had some people state that they have stopped playing other sports, so their team sports that they used to do and their physical activity has like they've had to leave those sports, and that's just, yeah, at the grassroots level. And so that means that then having some kind of group space where you can come and do your physical exercise and just feel affirmed and you feel in place is really important. And so, yeah, don't know if you want to add anything on that, Beck.
Yeah, I think it's outside. We know that people are trans, non-binary, intersex people are being excluded now from specific sporting bodies. So more around like, what are the people that are included? What are they doing to question it? I suppose. Like that, yeah. When you're in that space and you're allowed in that space, are you looking around and seeing that who's been excluded, and are you speaking up about that? There was a football team that did that recently. I think they're near Leeds, and then yeah, they then got excluded from quite a lot of stuff, and they had to renege a little bit. But like, it's just interesting, and it did come up, but. I think the points that people have already made around having specific spaces where people can do bike maintenance and get together and gather is really important, social rides, but even just having the opportunity to have community is really important.
Brilliant. Thanks, Beck. Luke, I saw you nodding quite vigorously at that point. So do you want to come in?
I think I was nodding very vigorously partly around the kind of Cycling UK response that a lot of people have had to actually, support the inclusion of trans women in that list, which I'm very much for. I also just wanted to give a little mention to Leap Sports, who are a great advocacy organisation in Scotland for LGBTQ plus sport activity. But I also, if I can follow that all up with a question for the speakers, Steve, which is, if you could talk a little bit, I guess, about how your research is connecting with other fields of research around mobility, around placemaking, and LGBTQ plus experience of that. Certainly, I guess the context for that question is like, in thinking about active travel and LGBTQ plus experience of active travel, like I was delighted to find your research because I could find so little other research. So it'd be really good to know like what other research you're connecting with, and whether that's, you know, in a kind of policy, local authority, government context, or if that's in an academic context.
Thanks, Luke. Jeronia, did you want to pick that one up? And Matt, Beck, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, I think that now we're starting to see more research on that topic, and as I mentioned, more than it being like the mere movement of people, all what this mobility entails, just like to be recognized by others, to make an eye contact and then start talking with somebody. This is something that does not happen when you're either in your house or driving a car. So I would say that the meanings of these mobilities might go beyond that. And there's also like a queer approach to active mobility, because sometimes we focus on the purpose of the trip, on the destination. And there is a researcher that emphasizes that we should disregard the point, because it's very heteronormative thinking, like having this timeline of things that are supposed to happen, for instance, in a trip. So I think this also is an approach towards mobility, but also about the way we think of disregarding the point of LGBTIQ plus mobility, and thinking all what it entails beyond, going from A to B.
Thanks, Jeronia. Matt, Beck, anything to add? And then I'm going over to H in hospital.
Um, yeah, I guess I was thinking about, I want to just give a quick shout out as well to Rachel Aldred, who both me and Jeronia have both worked with and has been so supportive of this kind of work. And so that kind of like someone who's a professor in at Westminster, and so that really showing like the leadership, but really kind of taking people doing kind of this research under their wing, and that's been really great and supportive. And in terms of like the wider then research context for me, I guess because I kind of I've got a piece of writing on experiences of housing for trans folk, trying to be published in some kind of book, one of these kind of handbooks for space and sexualities or something. But for me, it's making those connections around how your bodily autonomy, which is kind of around gender identity, it's really seen as in terms of relationship to the healthcare system, but your bodily autonomy is, as Jeronia highlighted, it's always changing depending on the space and place and the kind of like how that kind of morphs. And so thinking about all those different aspects in your life that can kind of give you greater independence or autonomy or not. And so in housing, I looked at kind of housing cooperatives as a way that then gave people a bit more autonomy over their kind of space and their relationships to the home. And so I think cycling fits into that, or active travel fits into that, because it's just those ways that you can really have independence over so many different domains in your life, which is kind of resisting what it could be otherwise.
Thanks, Matt. Brilliant stuff. And if you haven't spotted it, there's a reciprocal appreciation of the work in the chat from Rachel. So there you go. That's a very lovely thing. Beck, anything to add before I bring H in? No? Okay, H, make it brief. We're almost at the end. And then I've got one last question from Sally about politicians.
I'll try two things. Well, two things. First, given our Spanish, es fiesta, as we say, isn't it? We're having a happy time. And I would look at Medice curate ipsum, which I like saying dirty things in Latin. There's a book called Tools for Life, and it's all about setting up bike hubs. It was 1996, Karen Overton in the States. And I get the feeling that you could actually do a lot, particularly because the bicycle's a low-cost, easy entryway to get people into more than just cycling, social, jobs, work, and things like that. And you can progress it from there. And finally, a lovely fundraiser, which I'd love to see going again, was Bikes Not Bombs. That's a bicyclette, CBC non-bombas or something like that. But basically, they gave bikes to local artists, turned them into mobile works of art, which are street legal, and then they held an art auction. And so people are riding around in the States on absolutely unique bikes, which are totally unnickable and are works of art. Now, that is a brilliant fundraiser, and it also knits the community together. Testes Canisiae.
Absolutely spectacular contribution there, H, in several languages as well. So let's say
it was Testes Canisiae, if you know the Latin.
Well, my Latin, a little bit rusty. Don't mind admitting that in front of you all. Don't quite understand what you're saying, but there you go. Listen, we've got one last question for the three of you, which is from Sally, which is whether your work has connected with the political or planning sphere, but particularly the political agenda. I think that'd be really interesting to hear from you if there's been any political response to anything that you've uncovered or that you flagged in your research. If anybody wants to jump in on that. Or are you flying under the political radar, Jeronia?
Matt, do you want to start?
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking about me and Beck gave a presentation to the local public health authority in Brighton and Hove as part of their kind of continuing professional development seminar series. And I guess I think we were both just really struck when we just everyone just got it and they were so supportive of the research, and it makes it very different when you're not having to justify why you should care or think about trans or queer people. They just like, what can we do? What does your research show? You know, they're just like, they want to get into the nitty gritty and they just want more and more. And that's really amazing. But I know that, and sometimes that's in a little bit of a bubble, and it's not like that everywhere. But yeah, I think it's like when you find you're having to justify at that first stage just why people should care about trans or queer people, it gets really stuck, and you end up kind of making arguments that you don't really want to, because you're kind of like going off elsewhere, you know, you're kind of, so yeah, that's where it's been really nice in that sense so far.
Yeah, I also discussed it with policymakers, and they all agreed that it was insightful. And the point that I share, and I think they both, is that both, sidewalls and bike lane allow all these interactions to happen, and on the other hand, we have all these restriction policies that limit queer mobilities, that do not allow our lives to be shared. And I think that when I landed it on like sidewalls and bike lanes, when they got the point.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jeronia. Almost wrapping up now. Mark Strong, you had your hand up for a moment. Have you changed your mind?
Well, I just wanted to say, as a sort of partly representative of the political sphere in Brighton, how great it is to see Beck and Matt's presentation, and Jeronia as well, but particularly from the Brighton point of view. I think obviously in a place like Brighton, which is so much more queer friendly than many other places, it's great to have it. It would be great to see it rolled out elsewhere. I'd say in the political sphere, there will be lots of people who would be obviously very supportive. We have a transport partnership next week, and if there's anything I could take physically along to that, because we can't add things to AOBs, it would be great to do that. But there would also be people, which I don't want to discuss here, but there would also be people I know who would be, unfortunately, sadly, less supportive as well. But if there's anything I can do to help, well, you know, we've emailed each other, Beck, so we know we do know each other, but it'd be great to do more.
Brilliant. Nice one, Matt. No, thanks, Mark. Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up, particularly given that Elizabeth has sent me by WhatsApp a translation of some of what H was saying. And it was filthy Latin. So I am going to have to wrap it up as quickly as possible before it gets even more filthy, courtesy of H. So H, while we're on it, hope you get better soon. Beck, Jeronia, Matt, thank you so much for absolutely fascinating. I'm sure you've seen from everybody's reaction, that was really great session, and we really appreciated your presentation. So thank you so much. Hope we can see you all next week. Next week we've got Chris Stibelt from the Friends of Rother Valley Way to talk about rural active travel routes, particularly managing landowner concerns. So there you go. Make sure you tune in for that, and otherwise have a lovely evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye.